as an athlete, I've always struggled with, and I still struggle with today, like control. Control. I've always been told, you do something, you get an outcome. So if I can control what I'm doing, I will get an outcome. That's not life.
Yeah.
In this hike, we ultimately ended up having zero control, right? Mm-hmm. So with that, to me, it's let go, let God.
Welcome to the Injured Athletes Club podcast, the show that helps athletes cope with sports injuries and bounce back stronger. I'm mental skills coach, Carrie Jackson. We're sorry you're here, but we're glad you're with us.
And I'm journalist Cindy Kuzma. This week, our guest is author and athlete Chelsey Klein, who talks about a traumatic hiking accident that she survived. So just a little heads up that there is a description of some difficult things that happened to her in this episode. Before we start talking with Chelsey, though, we want to let you know about resources that we have for injured athletes who are also going through difficult times.
Since we are interviewing an author that's going to share a bit about her book, we wanted to also make sure you know about our book and that is an incredible resource for you. Our book, Rebound, is a book that has been written all about the mental, emotional aspects of injury recovery. So Rebound, train your mind to bounce back stronger from sports injuries. You can get it wherever you love to buy your books. There's an Audible version where you can hear me coming right through your headphones as if I'm right there walking the path with you. Or we've got a Kindle version and a paperback version, however you like to consume your books. But it's a really incredible resource for anybody that is going through injury and wanting some tools to help boost your resilience and confidence through that process of your injury recovery. And you'll get to hear more about some of those tools that our guest used intuitively for herself in our upcoming episode today.
Right. Thanks for sharing that, Carrie. And also we want to give a great big thank you to our exclusive sponsor for this season, Lever Movement. They're the creators of the Lever System, a portable lightweight device that attaches to a treadmill to reduce your body weight. You'll hear more about them later in the episode, but just a heads up that you can use code INJURED20 for 20% off any device at levermovement.com. With that, let's get on to this week's show. As I mentioned, our guest is Chelsey Klein. She's a lifelong athlete who played collegiate volleyball at the University of Texas, and before that, she was a gymnast. She now works as a sales representative, but she's also the author of a book called Beyond the Edge, A Survivor's Tale. This is a memoir about a very traumatic near-death experience she had while hiking Mount Shasta. And Chelsey shares some of that with us today. And I was really struck by what she talks about the experience of writing the book was like. And not just the experience of writing the book, but the experience of putting out in the world and how different she felt when her story was out there. And she felt like she had sort of accomplished some of what she had set out to do. So there's a lot in here that's tough to listen to, and she does get emotional at some points, but it's also just in a lot of ways a touching journey that can help a lot of other people who've been through things that are really challenging.
Yeah, I really loved our conversation about identity and how challenging it is, as most of you listening understand this, like how challenging it is to feel like your identity has been threatened when you're injured and that loss of athletic identity, but also the process that some athletes go through of like, do I even want that identity anymore? And that was really one of my favorite parts of the conversation. And then I also liked later on, you'll see why we had this particular term come up of grace. But I loved that she talked about also the importance of giving yourself grace as well as giving others grace. And so that was another highlight for me in our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're glad to share this with you. Here is our interview with Chelsey. Chelsey, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us on the Injured Athletes Club.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
So we have a saying around here, which is that we're sorry you're here, but we're glad you're with us. And we know that injury and recovery and the whole life of an athlete can be a roller coaster with a lot of ups and downs along the way. So we say that, Chelsey, so you know that when we ask this question, we want the real answer. How are you doing today?
Well, I always like to say I am grateful, I am blessed, I'm here and I can't complain, right? Now, at the end of the day, do I feel that every day, every moment of every day? No, but that is where the mindset, the mentality of, how I just try to wake up and work through that to not let it hold me back when it comes to whatever it is I'm going to accomplish that day. So how am I doing today? I feel good. I feel great.
Nice.
Tomorrow, I don't know, but that's
right?
why
That's right.
we continue to work through this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Chelsey, huge congratulations on publishing your memoir. We know that writing a book is a huge deal. And in this case, you revisited what is unquestionably a really difficult experience in the process. And now you're talking about it again with us, and you've talked about it on other podcasts to promote the book. And, we'll talk a little bit about what happened, but I'm kind of curious how writing and how talking about it more has kind of felt for you. And some of this we may get into more later, but are there things you've learned or realized through the process of writing and talking about your experience that changed the way you reflect on it?
Yeah. So, a lot of people ask me, right, like how therapeutic it was and what and exactly your question, like, what did you get out of it? It's interesting because I talk about it a lot. I do. I talk about the accident a lot, whether it's a stranger on the street or other podcasts that I've been on even before I wrote the book. So for me, I say that the therapeutic part was actually putting it out and publishing it. Mm-hmm. The day that I published it and the day that it went out into the world is really where I felt the most fulfilled. Because one thing that I've really tried to find throughout the last 5 years is, what is my purpose? What was the purpose of my survival? And I truly believe, because of the very first podcast I did about 3 years ago, before I even decided to write a book, it was to share the story. So yes, in the moments of reliving, not just the accident, but really the last 38 years of my life, was that therapeutic, right? Taking me back to my struggles, taking me back to thinking about how I overcame them. Absolutely. All of that did play a role in the therapeutic part of writing. But for me, the therapeutic part was this weight that was lifted off my shoulders once it was published. I felt like I finally accomplished what I survived for. And if I could just inspire and motivate and change the heart or the life of one person, I've done my job. And it's mine, right? So all these other podcasts and things that I've done to speak about it has been extremely rewarding. And I'm just so grateful for those opportunities. But at the end of the day, this book is mine. And it's my story that I've been able to share, that I've been able to vulnerably put out into the world to say, here I am. Right. And that to me has been the very therapeutic part, because it's kind of just a take it or leave it at this point. Not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody's going to like the story. Not everybody's going to agree to you or agree with you. But I've worked over the last few years of just being able to accept that and be okay with that. Right. Mm-hmm. It's okay that not everybody's going to agree or like it, as long as I am okay with myself and where I'm at.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's such an incredible process, right? Like that birthing of the book, and that like there is something incredible about once it is out in the world, it's like, okay, I fulfilled part of my purpose, and that
absolutely
just feels incredible. And I love what you're saying too, where it's like, then you let it go, right? Like you kind of have to, like, now it is out in the world and it's going to help people. It's going to help, and and other people are going to set it aside, never read it. And that's okay. Like it's going to get into the hands of the people that it can help.
Yep. And then that's why I did it. Honestly, that's why I did it. Right. I didn't do it for anything other than this feeling of accomplishment within myself, in the sense of I survived. I need to share the story. I feel like this is my purpose and my calling. And then everybody else can do with it as they wish.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, we definitely encourage people to pick it up and to learn more about what you did survive, because it is incredible, remarkable. And, for those who haven't read it yet, we don't have to go into your full story here, but can you take us back just a little bit to that time, September of 2020, and tell us how you ended up on that mountain, and a little bit about what happened when you realized things weren't going the way you planned?
Yeah. So hiking to me was something I ended up picking up because of and with Jeff, my boyfriend, who I was hiking with at the time. He loved hiking. He loved being outdoors. He was from Colorado. So that was his love. And I am just so grateful that he really taught me how to enjoy and love that too. I'm a gym rat. I'm an athlete. I've literally grown up in gyms, whether it was in a gymnasium when I was a gymnast, the volleyball gym when I was playing volleyball, or the workout gym when I'm in the gym lifting weights, right? And so for me, learning how to love and cherish and find meaning and my faith even deeper, right? I've always had faith, but that deeper connection in my faith, I'm so grateful for that. And so I didn't start, like I said, hiking until Jeff and it was during COVID. So we really had to find ways to get outdoors and to put, our energy, right, to work, as we're all stuck indoors during COVID. And so, Mount Shasta was not the first hike we did. We did a lot of technical, more challenging hikes leading up to Mount Shasta. So it's not like we just woke up one day and we thought, oh, we're athletes and we're strong. Let's just go hike a 14,000 foot mountain. We were definitely working up to it. So we had hiked for months beforehand. We had hiked all over California, and 10,000, 12,000 foot hikes. But from what I was taught from Jeff, 14,000 feet mountain, those are very huge mountains to accomplish. And there's not many of them in California. And so that was just something he had always wanted and inspired to do. And I was along for the ride. So, Mount Shasta was actually a hike that we were doing to train to go do Mount Hood, which we were trying to do the weekend after Mount Shasta. That was like our big final hike in California. We had done pretty much every other hike that you can think of leading up to Shasta and Hood, which are 14,000 foot mountains. So we did it like any other hike, right? We drove out, we hiked a little bit until we got up to be able to pitch a tent, slept in a tent overnight in the woods, got up the next morning and went to go hike to the summit and come back down. So we were planning on doing a day hike. What we did not do though is do enough research beforehand. We should not have been hiking a glacier in September, at the end of September. We should not have started at 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning when you're trying to get to a summit of 14,000 feet. The mountain alone was not a long distance. It was the elevation though. That was the tricky part. So we didn't think we needed a full day to hike it because again, the distance was not as long as what we were used to on some of the other hikes we had done. That would take us 2 days to do. But, so we started later. We started too late and we should not have been on a glacier at the end of September. But we got up and did our normal day hike as if, we didn't have anything technical. We had, our hiking boots and our poles and everything else. We never had ropes. We never did anything that technical because I don't have the experience for that. And I had never cared to. For me, hiking was the sense of accomplishment, right? Getting up to summit. And for me, that was the closest I felt like I could ever get to God naturally. We could all get on a plane. We could all, get up. I went and climbed, the Eiffel Tower in Paris. But for me, hiking was the most natural way I could be up and close to my faith and close to God. So, yeah, we got up and did our normal day hike and it was about 4:30 in the afternoon and we were at 12,000 feet and we realized, we're fighting with sunset at this point. We started too late. We're not going to make it to summit. But now not only do we need to turn around because we're not going to make it to 14,000 feet, which is fine, but now we need to get down before it gets too dark. So we went up on all rock and dirt. We maybe saw patches here and there of little bits of snow, like ice, right? Nothing like soft snow, like nothing like fresh powder. But never once did it ever cross my mind that we are in danger, that anything could happen ever on any of my hikes. And we went up on all rock and dirt, no big deal. But what we did before the hike was we would always say, we're going to prepare for the worst and pray for the best. So the day before we drove out to Mount Shasta, we went to REI. I bought crampons for my boots, never even worn or seen or heard of them. I bought an ice axe, again, never seen or heard of used of it, but we knew that we needed to prepare for it. We knew that we were hiking a glacier, right? But again, not thinking we would ever need to use it in our bags. But we got up to 12,000 feet and we said, we need to turn around. At this point, we need to get off this mountain. We're fighting with sunset. And for whatever reason, we go to turn around and all of a sudden the mountain was covered in just black ice, just rock solid ice. And we're looking down and all we see is just ice in front of us. But we could see to the left of us about 30 yards away where the dirt was that we came up. Because like I said, we came up on rock and dirt. And he was standing next to me and we're just thinking, oh my gosh, we just need to get over to that dirt. We can't go down at this point. And I don't know where we were off path or what had happened. It's a bit of a blur. We could just see that we needed to get over. So he was sitting next to me. He actually helped put crampons on my feet or on my boots because, again, I had never even used them. I literally took them out of the box before we even started the hike the day before. Mm-hmm. So he's putting crampons on my feet and I'm just sitting there going, oh my gosh, get me off this mountain. I was so scared. It was freezing cold. And I just, at no moment did I even realize like what was actually truly happening. All I knew is I just wanted to get off this mountain. Mm-hmm. So he's sitting next to me and he says, okay, we need to just get over. So he gets up to take 2 steps to walk across to lead the way and takes 2 steps and falls down this mountain. So I see him go down and I thank the Lord at 12,000 feet had phone service and had my phone in my fanny pack. And I took out my phone and I called 911 as he's going down the mountain. And they answered and they said, well, they're asking me all these questions. Where are you? And I'm like, I don't know where I am. Jeff had the Garmin watch. I had no clue where I was other than I'm just sitting on this freezing cold mountain. And they said, well, it's going to take, first of all, we need to get the search and rescue team to come get you. You just called the sheriff's department. They said, so we need to get off the phone. We need to have the search and rescue team call you at 12,000 feet. Really?
Right.
You're going to get off the phone with me? They said, we need to have the search and rescue team call you and they're going to be the ones that's going to send a helicopter out. And I'm thinking to myself, no way in heck am I getting off the phone with you right now. I don't even know how I even got service to even call you, let alone are you going to have an incoming call to me? But I did. We got off the phone and not more than 30 seconds later, I had an incoming phone call from a local number and it was the sheriff's department. And I'm talking to them again. They're asking me all these questions and I'm like, I don't know where I am. All I know is that at this point, my boyfriend is lying at the bottom of the mountain, not moving. And they said, if you think he's alive, if you think you can get down to him, you could try, but it's going to take 4.5 hours to get a helicopter to you. And I'm sitting here looking at him thinking, there's no way in heck I'm going to sit on this mountain and wait for a helicopter for 4.5 hours. Yeah. So I got off the phone. And again, I'm scratching the surface of the details, like the good, more details are in the book, right? So I'm scratching the details of some other things that happened in between, but for time's sake. So long story short, I got off the phone and I tried to get down to him. And that's when I ended up taking 2 steps and I slipped and fell. I remember losing my ice axe and falling. I don't remember a thing after that moment until all of a sudden I felt someone just tugging at my waist and I blacked out again. I woke up in the hospital. I broke my leg. So I have a metal rod and screws in my leg. I dislocated my clavicle, fractured my spine. I broke all my ribs. I had hypothermia. I had a concussion. And I said, well, where's Jeff? Thinking he was in the room next to me. And they said, no, honey, he didn't make it. So, my leg, like I said, my leg was already surgically done. I don't remember a thing, but it's in the book. I ended up interviewing and I'm friends with to this day. The man that was the reason why I felt the tugging is because it was, one of the men from the Army National Guard that ended up finding me. They ended up having to send the Black Hawk helicopter out that had night vision. Right. So there were actually 2 helicopters involved. I went to 2 different hospitals. They originally took me to the Shasta Shasta hospital, and I was too injured and too trauma there. So then they took me by ambulance over to Mercy Redding is where I ended up actually waking up. And my leg, like I said, was already surgically done. And they were telling me about everything. So the reason why I felt that tugging it was because it was the man that was hoisted down out of the helicopter. He was putting me in the seat to life flight me up. And so I interviewed him. I interviewed the pilot. They're both in the book of extensive details of what they went through trying to come get me at 12,000 feet.
Oh, yeah.
To summarize it, that helicopter, that Black Hawk helicopter, there's only a couple in the country that even have the night vision capabilities of the gear. That happened to be grounded there that morning because they were out there supporting all the wildfires that were going on in Shasta.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that helicopter wasn't there, it would have taken an additional 5.5 hours to get them out to me because the closest that they would have been was in Oregon. And so that was, a miracle in itself. But yeah, so I ended up waking up to the hospital, hearing the news of my boyfriend not surviving his fall. They ended up keeping me in the hospital for a week, kind of under like life support. I think we know this, right? As athletes, it's, if you're not healthy mentally, it's hard for you to recover physically, right? Mm-hmm. When you're physically injured, it's hard for you to have a positive mental mindset. So for them, it was telling me the news of my boyfriend dying, then telling me about all my injuries. They needed to mentally keep me stable. So they ended up actually just keeping me asleep. They had me just sleeping because they knew I needed to heal physically.
Right.
Because if I was dealing with the trauma mentally, my body was going to be in shock. My body was going to be in stress. So I spent a week up in the hospital there, and my family, my parents, ended up coming there. My sister, again, all this detail is in the book, but, so after a week of recovery in the hospital, I came home. I ended up living with my parents because I was obviously bedridden between a broken leg, a fractured spine, and a dislocated shoulder. I couldn't use crutches. I literally, obviously there's nothing I could do to try to support myself. So I was bedridden. So it's just, and then the recovery and the journey went on from there. So, never did I ever think we were in danger. Never did I ever on any of my hikes think that anything could ever happen. And yet the one thing that we felt safe and comfortable doing during COVID to prevent us from getting sick, to prevent the craziness in the world, is actually what ended up, unfortunately, taking Jeff's life and my own, almost mine.
Yeah. Well, I can't thank you enough for sharing all that. And again, it just strikes me, I read the book and felt it so much when I was reading it. And I just, I'm so sorry for everything that you went through. And it's really clear as you were explaining it now, and even more so in the book, when you kind of go through all of the different, like you say, small miracles that happened that enabled you to get where you were. I'm curious how it felt like for you, because it's so hard for us to ask for help sometimes, right? And you had to ask for help in a very extreme situation. And then later you talk to those people about what they went through to provide that help. Like, what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, looking back, and I talk about this a lot in the book, one thing I did in the book, not only do I talk about all the miracles and just that literally the miracles of why I'm here, but also the lessons I learned from it, right? I think that's through every trial in my life, I'm very grateful for them because it always provides me an opportunity to learn and to grow and to get better. And so I really reflected back on everything that had happened, whether it was my childhood, playing sports, everything that I talk about in the first half of the book and this memoir leading up to the hikes, to then what are all the things that I could look back on in all those hikes that I ever did that would make me better, that I could learn from, right? And move on. And to your point, asking for help is not easy. There's a bit of a stubbornness in me. There's a bit of a go-getter in me. There's a bit of a competitive side in me where I've just been taught if you want something, you go get it, right? You work for it, you get it. And that was a big, big lesson that I had to learn, not only as I was going through the recovery, and to your point, asking for help as I recover, but also looking back and reflecting, there were actually a lot of signs and a lot of times I should have stopped and said, we need help. One of those is that very last moment before we decided to get back over to the dirt. I remember sitting there, and again, this is all hindsight, right? But I just remember sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, I went off this mountain. I went off this mountain I don't want to do this. I want to call for help.
Mm-hmm.
But the fighter in me, the go-getter in me, and that gets me emotional, right? Because it's looking back, could things have been different? Yes, right? But that's not going to change anything.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I've quickly learned how to surrender. It's not giving up. It's just allowing ourselves to know when enough is enough. And in that moment, yeah, we should have asked for help. To think that we, as experienced as he was, and then unexperienced, I was not inexperienced, or as inexperienced as I was, we should not have tried to get down that mountain ourselves. We should have called for help. And then again, in the recovery process, there were times where I was stubborn and I wanted to walk immediately. I went from working out 5, 6, 7 days a week, just this active go-getter girl that I've been since I was young and 3 years old as a gymnast that I talk about in my book, to literally in a blink of an eye being bedridden. Mm-hmm. That was probably one of the most shocking moments and struggling of most difficult times, where everything I had ever known, the endorphins, the feel good, the clear your mind, being active, being outdoors, was in an instance taken away from me. Mm-hmm. And I had to learn how to surrender, sit in my wheelchair and ask my mom to get me a glass of water or help me get up just to go to the restroom, right? The things that we lose sight of on a daily was literally stripped away in a blink of an eye. Mm-hmm. So I've had to ask for help. I've had to learn how to ask for help. I am grateful for my independence. I'm grateful for the fact that if I want something, I go get it, and my work ethic, because that's, I work in sales and my success of being an athlete, I owe it to that. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, there is that understanding of there's a difference between giving up and surrendering, giving up versus surrendering. Right.
That's right.
And being able to know that it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times it's better to ask for help. And, so that's where I'm at now. That was a big piece that I learned in the book or that I wrote about in the book, because, I used to take pride in the fact that I would just grind and I would just go and I would just never give up. And I would just do anything and everything I could. I put myself through discomfort, whether that's training or running harder or whatever it was, right? Working longer hours because I needed to be the best and I had to prove something, to now saying, you know what? For what? Right?
Right. Yeah.
What's that worth though? And so that's been a big piece of the being able to ask for help, being able to let go, being able to surrender and be at peace with knowing that it's okay. It doesn't make us weaker, right? It doesn't make us less than.
Can you run more mileage without getting hurt? Return to running sooner after an injury.
Keep your fitness even when you're facing a setback? Or get to the start line healthy and faster? If you ask our friends at Lever Movement, you just might find the answer to all of these questions is a resounding yes. We are thrilled to welcome Lever Movement back as our sponsor for season 9 of the Injured Athletes Club podcast. And if all that sounds good, they have an offer that makes it easier than ever for you to try the Lever system for yourself. In case you haven't heard about it yet, the Lever system is a portable, lightweight device that attaches to a treadmill to reduce your body weight. This is very good news for all of us athletes because it means less impact on the joints, so we can come back from injury safely or even prevent getting hurt in the first place. And the best part is that it's portable. That means you can use it at home or even take it to the gym and set it up in less than 2 minutes.
Elite athletes like marathoner Sarah Hall and Jess Lehrmanth, an Olympic gold medalist in triathlon, have used Lever in their training and rehab routines. And we know, so have many of you in the Injured Athletes Club. If you'd like to check out the Lever system for yourself, use the discount code INJURED20 to get 20% off any device. And stay tuned here on the podcast and in the Facebook group for the Injured Athletes Club this season. We'll have more exciting updates from our partnership. We have some fun plans in the works with Lever we know you're going to want to check out.
It's really incredible. I think one of the things that some of my injured athletes that I've worked with have come to realize are the things that they didn't realize they were taking for granted until they could not do them at all. And how there's this incredible sort of awareness of how grateful I am to be able to go to the bathroom on my own. And that is something I, of course, took for granted because I've always been able to do that. And so it's a really interesting process, these different phases that you go through that injury. And so many injured athletes struggle with that loss of independence and that feeling challenged by asking for help, and just feeling challenged by, when you are, I think this is why it's so important for you to share your story and for athletes to share their stories, is because I think when you're not an athlete, people who aren't athletes don't understand the loss of just the way that you show up in the world and the way that they're part of what's meaningful to you in the world is in your body and is through that. And that's a loss that I think not everybody recognizes is in and of itself. Yes, there's all these other pieces that you lose, but that so suddenly for you, there was very much life before and life after in so many different ways with that experience. So when
I was gonna say it's our identity, right? It's our identity.
That's exactly right.
You know, as you're sitting here explaining this, and it's it's literally that's how I introduce myself. That's who I am, right? I think about the sales jobs and the opportunities that I've been given. It's because I have this athletic background, and everybody wants the athlete, right? Because we have this identity and this mentality of we work hard, we're team players, we don't give up, we do all these things to win. And it's our identity. And exactly to your point, that's one thing that I've really had to also understand about this kind of new me and the second chance at life that I've had is that identity for me, I am choosing for it to not exist anymore. I had to wake up and be okay with the fact that I don't want to live that way anymore. I don't want to grind until I'm sick anymore. I don't want to work out that hard anymore. I don't want to, I've learned, and I used to get I remember working through my therapist with this because I thought something was wrong with me. I'm why am I not as motivated anymore? I say motivated because I think there's so many ways that we could be, that can be defined. But I would wake up and I'm why do I not want to go win like I used to? And why am I not as motivated to do the things that I used to do anymore? And I used to think, am I lazy? Am I where is this girl that had this spark? Yeah. And she helped me work through that because to your point, that identity died in me on that mountain or after that mountain. But let me tell you, I am so grateful for that. I am so grateful for that because I've now learned how to care about things that actually matter. And sometimes winning isn't what matters. Sometimes ending your day at a decent time to go for a walk with your best friend or walk your dog or go spend time with your family or work-life balance to me is everything at this point because I used to never do that, right? If I worked harder, if I put more hours into my day, there was more chance of me getting that next sale, or there was more, if I was in the gym longer, there was more chance of me being better. So I would have more playing time, but to what extent? And that's the part of that identity that I lost that I at first was really shameful of and I questioned. But now I'm you know what? This is it. This is who I am now. And I'm going to embrace it. And honestly, I'm a lot happier. I'm a lot happier now that I have my walks outside and that instead of going to the gym every single day, I choose to go for a walk or I choose to get outdoors or I choose to do something different. And that's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. I'm so glad you shared that because that's such a challenge for so many injured athletes is that it's natural for there to, it won't happen for everybody, but it's very natural to have a moment where you're starting to re-examine your relationship to your sport and your competitive self and your athletic self and what do I want it to look like now? And as that identity is in that transition or that evolution, it's very confusing for the athlete and very shameful, to your point. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because sometimes people don't recognize that particular emotion. And it's just so confusing in those moments where you're like, but wait a minute, this was the most important thing in my life. And now it's my motivation's not there and it's not feeling the same way. What is wrong with me? Right? That's the shame that comes, instead of like, nothing, there's nothing wrong with you. This is part of the transition of the decision of, am I ready to allow that identity to evolve into something different, or do I need to find my way back? And you're not always finding your way back. And sometimes that isn't even the goal. It's you've gone through something and you've changed from that experience. And so is it even possible to go back to the same identity? So I love that you shared that, because that is a very challenging and very specific sort of part of the journey for a lot of injured athletes.
Yeah. And I think, and I don't want to go back to that identity.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the other thing. It's like, you could sit here and you're like, okay, how do I get back to that? But like, ultimately, again, like for what, why do you want to get back to that? What was that that you want to get back to? Because ultimately, like, was that healthy? Was that an actual true purpose? Like, why do I want to go back to constantly feeling like I have to be number one? What is that for?
Yeah.
And so it's just that like internal digging of then being able to realize, actually, no. Okay. So I don't want to go back to that, and so that, that's the other piece of it is again, that acceptance and realizing like, what was that doing? What was that fulfilling? What was that filling? And what was the purpose of that, and then to where I am now and what fills me now, what's the purpose now that I have maybe more time and that I have, this ability to do things that I love and spend more time with people, because I'm not feeling like I need to constantly be doing something else that's going to just because then that's going to make me number one or whatever it is. So absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you did write in the book too, that, you did recover more quickly than people anticipated. And I'm guessing some of that was your athletic mindset and your sort of determination in the rehab process, but especially considering this identity shift and all of the emotions that you were going through at the time. How did you kind of find that balance in your rehab and recovery to stay motivated and stay as positive as you could without pushing yourself too hard?
Yeah. I do owe a lot of it to the fact that I was actually in the best shape of my life during COVID and hiking. And it's kind of funny. And I look back because I'm like, all these years since I was 3 years old, I have spent in a gym training in a way for a sport or lifting weights and all these things, right? To get into great shape. And it wasn't until I actually took a step back and started hiking and started getting outdoors and started slowing down that I was truly in probably the best shape of my life. And so leading up to Shasta, I think that was I'm grateful for that, right? I'm very healthy. So that helped a lot with my recovery. But absolutely it was the fighter and the athlete in me. I joke, yes, the stubbornness, the competitiveness, because I was determined to get back to life. One, I didn't want to be a burden on anybody. I was living with my parents because I was obviously not able to do pretty much anything. So I was living with my parents. My mom and dad were both working at the time. They had a lot of other fish to fry, and I just didn't want to be a burden to them. I didn't want to, I never feel good asking for help in that sense. If there's something that I can control and do on my own, I'm going to do it. And so that was a big piece for me as I was motivated because I didn't want to be a burden to my parents. I just wanted to get back to life. I just wanted to get back to normal. So whatever normal looked like, I didn't know, but normal enough that I could control living back home, seeing friends, moving. I ended up getting a puppy. And I just thought, you know what? She helped motivate me to get out of my wheelchair. I was still in my wheelchair when I got her. And I just thought, if the faster I could get out of this wheelchair, the faster I could just go home and go on a walk with her. So it was just, again, I think it was just that mentality that will never go away, that I am grateful for. I will say that is the positive of this athlete in me, is that I was just determined to get better because I also knew how good I felt mentally and physically, and vice versa, how awful I felt in that time mentally, being bedridden, being sedentary, not being able to do anything for myself. I had no sense of accomplishment of anything, that the faster I could get up and do something on my own, the faster I was feeling like I was accomplishing something too. So I'm extremely, extremely grateful for the athlete in me that just pushed myself to get back to life as fast as I could. So yeah, to your point, I started walking after 5 weeks. I ended up doing physical therapy on my leg for 6 weeks, and I was released from that. I ended up not having to have physical therapy. I had 2 surgeries on my shoulder, never had to have physical therapy on my shoulder. My spine healed on its own, even though it was fractured, never had to have physical therapy on my shoulder. I was released from all medical supervision 7 months to the day of my accident, and haven't seen a doctor since. I run, I do yoga, I do Pilates, I lift weights, anything that you can think of. I have zero medical restriction. Mentally, I probably don't do a lot of fun, crazy things as I would maybe have done in the past, just because I'm like, I'm too old for this. It's not worth it. I don't want to get hurt. I look at injuries very differently now. I think that is one of the great positive takeaways of being an athlete. I'm not going to sit here and harp on me and all the negative things about being an athlete. I'm extremely proud of and grateful for a lot of the positive traits that I have because of being an athlete. And that is absolutely one of them. It's just that mentality of being a fighter that I owe that recovery to. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing all that. And thanks for sharing about the puppy too. I think you would or would not be surprised at how often injured athletes have a dog or another animal in their recovery story.
I named her Grace. She's actually in the book, a little picture of her. I'd never had a dog before, and I just, and I named her Grace because that was a big word. It's a big word that I have in the book of, that's one thing that I've also really had to learn, right? Is to give myself grace throughout this process.
Yes.
Give myself grace for this new person that I am, this new mentality that I have, for some days waking up and thinking, I don't want to do anything today. And I have to give myself grace for having that mentality, because the old me could never have told myself that. Mm-hmm. Absolutely not. Could I sit there and say, I don't want to work out today. I don't want to do this. I don't like it was, but I had to give myself grace. And then I quickly learned that I have to give others grace. Like I think about how many people I come in contact with walking down the street or just talking to people like this. We all have a story. We've all been through something. But that's the one thing that I get from a lot of people when they see me and they hear about my story. They're like, what? You have a metal rod in your leg? 5 years ago, you fell off a mountain? Like, you don't look like you were injured. You don't look like you. And I'm like, yeah, it just goes to show, like, we all have a story, and you have to just give people grace every time you come into contact, because you never know what they're going through. You never know what they've been through. And that's been a huge, reminder for me too, is when you have somebody driving by and they maybe get angry and have road rage, who knows what they're speeding to, right?
That's
maybe
right.
They're going home to their sick mother, maybe their child, like you just don't know. And so that's been a big piece for me too, is through this journey, is just giving myself grace and allowing myself to be different and to be new and to let go of the old, right? And then also just giving grace to others and knowing that not everything's about us. You never know what somebody's going through, and you just have to pray for them and just say, you know what, like, I give you grace. So, yeah. And so that's my puppy. I named her Grace.
Nice. Oh, is that who we heard in the background before we started?
She's a 10-pound Cavapoo, but thinks she's a 100-pound Husky. And she's not like yappy. She doesn't bark a lot. Like, she's not like a typical small dog that people, have this like thought of. But I will say she's a good guard dog. Like, she knows. Mm-hmm. I always know when my Amazon packages are here. I don't even have to worry about like a doorbell, because she just knows. I'm like,
she'll let you know.
I got my Amazon package. She'll just do a little bark, and I'm like, okay, someone was there.
Love that. Well, Chelsey, you talked about, being back to physical functioning and all of the things that you can do and maybe some things that you don't do. I'm curious if you have been hiking again or if you would go or like what that emotional experience is like.
Yeah, I haven't been on any technical hikes. Definitely haven't climbed any mountains. Not because I have fear of it, but because, Jeff got me into hiking and he really was the one that inspired me and got me out there. And I really did it in the beginning. I don't want to say like for him, but with him, right? Because that's something we did together and I knew how much he loved it. So I learned to love it with him because he was my partner.
Yeah.
So I always just say like, I would totally go do it again. Well, first of all, hiking is not cheap and I lost all of my gear except for my headlamp, which I speak about, which is a very, very, very important piece of how I was found. My headlamp, even though my helmet fell, my headlamp remained lit on my head, which is how the Black Hawk helicopter was why I was able to be found. So I can't believe I left that piece out because of all miracles, that is the biggest miracle of the fact that if that headlamp was not lit on my head, I would not have been found. I would not be here. So, anyway, so that's about the one piece that I have left over from my hiking journey. So I would need to go get everything again. But really, like I said, it would take a certain person, I think, to get me to go do it. I don't have the individual like fire and drive to go do it because Jeff was the one that really got me out there that I'm extremely grateful for. And I had some amazing experiences. I had some amazing times with him, but I'm also okay with that just being a season and chapter of my life that, if I don't ever go again, I'm okay with that because I'm just grateful for what I did have with him and the hikes that we were able to do.
Yeah. Well, Chelsey, I know that something else you're interested in doing is doing some motivational speaking. And I feel like there's already in our conversation so much that people can learn from and be inspired by about your story. But what are the biggest messages that you would hope to share in a venue like that with other people who encounter your story, who read your book, who listen to you speak?
Thank you so much for bringing that up. Yeah. And again, I think it comes down to those 5 takeaways. So one thing that I really wanted to make sure in the book was that I wanted it to be able to touch the lives of everyone, not just somebody who's into hiking, not just an athlete, not just, somebody of faith, right? Like I was really adamant about making sure that this book can touch the lives of everybody, or maybe just someone who wants a good miracle and a good story. Right? I'm okay with that too. So looking back and I think about my life and every stage of my life, whether it was being an athlete, working in sales, overcoming trauma, recovery, there's so many different pieces that I could go, faith, right? There's so many different avenues I could go with this and go with through just my life in general. But I would say those like 5 takeaways that really can fit is the grace piece, right? The giving up versus surrendering. Mm-hmm. It's being able to let go. I think as an athlete, I've always struggled with, and I still struggle with today, like control. Control. I've always been told you do something, you get an outcome. So if I can control what I'm doing, I will get an outcome. That's not life.
Yeah.
In this hike, we ultimately ended up having 0 control, right? Mm-hmm. So with that, to me, it's let go, let God. You can do everything in your life you put your seatbelt on, you look both ways before you cross the street, you eat healthy and work out every day. You do everything you can to control, right, an outcome, but ultimately, it's not up to us. Mm-hmm. So that's a big piece. And again, all these things I think can tie into a salesperson, can tie into an athlete, can tie into our faith. Because for me, it's let go, let God. Mm-hmm. Trust in the process. So yeah, I mean, I think there's just a lot of a lot of different miracles, a lot of different lessons that I've taken from this to be able to not only change like my mentality in my life, but to hopefully help those that are maybe going through a struggle in theirs and, are just trying to get through that. Cause it's easy to say life is short. It's easy to say, like you never know what you have till it's gone, or it's easy, all those cliches. And there are, I mean, the last, bit of the last bit of the book sounds very cliche, but it's very true. It's very true. And, I just don't want people to lose sight of that. And so that's why I just wanted to like dig in a little bit more. And like I said, be able to touch everybody, no matter the age, no matter their religion, no matter their background, no matter their profession. If I could just touch one person's life, I feel like I've achieved my calling of survival.
Yeah. Well, sometimes like cliches are cliches for a reason.
That's right.
Yeah. I honestly, like, I can't agree with them even more. It's true. It's 100%. It's true.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, again, Chelsey, we're so sorry for your loss and sorry for all you've been through, but so grateful to you for coming on and sharing this story with our listeners. Really appreciate it and wish you all of the best of luck in whatever your future goals are.
Thank you.
Book, with your speaking and anything else in life.
I appreciate you both very much for reaching out. And, it's just such a joy. These are the moments that fill my heart and make me feel like I've done the right thing and that we're getting there, right? There's purpose. There's always purpose to everybody's pain. And I feel like this is mine. So thank you.
Thanks again to Chelsey for joining us, and thanks to our sponsor, Lever Movement, for making this show possible. Remember, you can use code INJURED20 at levermovement.com for 20% off your purchase. We also want to give a great big shout out and a huge dose of gratitude to Jeremy Nessel for editing this episode and every single episode of the Injured Athletes Club. And we are super grateful to you, our listeners and club members. Remember, you can join our Facebook support group, the Injured Athletes Club, in between episodes. We're there 24 hours a day, every week. There you'll find support and advice from other people who just get it. You'll get links to that and everything else that we've mentioned on our website, injuredathletesclub.com. We'll see you there.